to a Gen Mouse 45 video. In fact, welcome to the first video of 2026. So hopefully you all had a good new year and holiday. And yes, we're back at it again. Today's video we will be talking about the fourth book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. And this one is called A Court of Frost and Starlight. And as you can see, relatively smaller in page numbers than the first three books that we covered. But I'm very excited to talk about this one because it's one of my favorites. Well, next to A Court of Mist and Fury. That one's also one of my favorites. For the other three books and how I joined the A Court of Thorns and Roses fandom, I'll have those video links posted down below. This video will review the content and plot of the fourth book, followed by my thoughts about the book and series up to date. Spoilers are ahead, you have been warned, there are spoilers. It was published in 2018 by Sarah J. Maas. I read the book from November 2025 to December 25, so it's a very, very quick read, very short read, and I finished reading the story on Christmas Day actually. That's how I spent my morning, was some nice, it's like a ambient type style music in the background, my book, my cup of coffee. It was very nice and relaxing, much needed. So if you see me looking off to the side, I have notes, surprise. The book is the shortest one in the series thus far, and that means there are no parts, like you know how in the past books it was like part one, you know, the curse breaker and stuff like that. This book, not so much. It's all one part. It does contain multiple points of views and will move from a character's perspective from time to time, which would be indicated at the beginning of each chapter. Into the story, it's so nice. I want to talk more at the end, but it's such a cozy vibe. So go get your tea, your coffee, your chocolate, get a nice warm blanket and everything, because this is a nice cozy book that we all needed after the first three. I think we can all agree. Alright, so the story begins with Feyre's point of view, reflecting on the first snowfall in Velaris, the city of the Night Court, city of dreams, city of starlight, and how she once dreaded the cold and the snow when she lived in the human lands. She tries to talk to Rhys through the bond on where he went and why he left in the morning so early, but she gets no response. Feyre goes to the kitchen to talk to the twins, Corwenda and Nula, about the snow in the past few solstices, ones that Rhys had missed. This will be his second one since coming back from under the mountain. So the first one, he came back, he didn't have Feyre. This time he has Feyre as High Lady of the Night Courts. Feyre reflected on how working kept her and Rhysand busy, to not think about the nights under the mountain and what happened during the war, as they were kept busy rebuilding Velaris. Feyre, even though she reflects on the happiness and joy winter solstice can bring, she still remembers what happened during the battle with her father's death, the Weaver, and tries to do some deep breaths before busying herself. She realizes how cramped the space has become with the paperwork, the furniture, their clothes are everywhere, and finally hears back from Rhysand through the bond that he is at Delvin's camp. Feyre decides to go for a walk in the snow. Rhysand has been listening to Cassian rant about the unfairness of the women in the camps, the Illyrian camps that is, and wanting them to train rather than help out with chores and the punishments that would happen when the chores were not completed in time or were incomplete. Rhysand makes a deal that the females get 90 minutes to train each day before chores and the males have to pitch in. After the conversation, Rhysand reflects on how he needed a break and how he wanted to be with Feyre, and reflects on times he was with Feyre. I'm trying to keep this channel a little bit PG here. Joe to be struggling next book, is what I have heard. Cassian again brings up the conversation again about females preparing for battle, and Rhys says he wants Cassian home for the solstice. Cassian asks about Nesta, and Rhysand says she was about the same. So Nesta, real quick, not caught. Nesta is the oldest sister, Archeron's sister, and Elaine is the middle sister, and Feyre is the youngest. Nesta is bitter, cold, not very kind to other people, kind of keeps to herself. Yeah, she going through a lot of trauma right now. Elaine, you know, she's very pretty, like even Feyre's like, you know, she's very beautiful and everything, kind of went through a dark spell in the third book after what happened. Yeah, third book with what happened with the cauldron, and she was betrothed to a human male, and that human male didn't want her anymore. So, but Elaine's doing a little bit better now. So, baking and gardening, go girl, go! Use those coping skills. Yay, love to see it. And then you have Feyre, the youngest, you know, the warrior, the fighter, the curse breaker, just living her best girly life, and whenever she finds the time, she paints. So, and it's actually because of Feyre I started painting again too, so you can go see my previous video on how that came to be. Anyway, back to this. So then it switches over to Cassian's point of view, his thoughts about Lord Delvin, and unsure about the new arrangements. He goes out flying and sees a large mountain. I'm going to try and say it. I'm going to say it wrong. Ramiel? A-R-M-I-E-L, where the sacred rite was held. He reflects back on the traditions of it and how it stood. He goes to an old abandoned village and reflects on his mother's passing. Then he thinks about Nesta and tries not to think of her, instead putting his focus on the upcoming trading. Then we switch back to Feyre's point of view. She was walking into the rainbow, so the rainbow, I don't know if it's in the middle of Velaris. It's somewhere in Velaris, but it's like where the artists live and can sell their goods or painting classes, things like that. It's very pretty. I imagine it's absolutely beautiful. Like, I picture in my mind, I'm like, I think it's like 100 times more beautiful than that. The rainbow, she wants to defend it. That was in the second book. The newness of the city being rebuilt. The people out in the snow enjoying the day, shopping, all that good stuff. Feyre reflected on how Rizan listened to the people's needs and gave them a promise to answer soon to meet the needs. So kind of like, you know, they come to him, they're like, oh, we need this and that and stuff, and he's like, okay, like, you know, I can't figure it out right now, but I promise to get back to you. Much different with Tamlin and the taxes. Tamlin was like, give me it, or else, you know, I'm gonna go after your family, or I'm gonna go take what's mine. It's like a very stark difference. Feyre comes across a rubble building, and as she stands there wondering about the previous occupants, a voice is heard, and Feyre turns to see a fairy named Rosina. I'm gonna say Rosina. Sorry if I'm pronouncing these names wrong. The two talk about the snow and the building, which was once a gallery, and how it was for sale by the family. Feyre declined the offer, saying she was not interested in buying it. Rosina invites Feyre to paint over at her studio. Feyre continues her walk, and Morgana, more is back, yay, joins her, and the two look through jewels, talking about the wealth Feyre and Rizan shared. They talk about presents and how the Winter Court celebrated their solstice. Mora tells Feyre they're headed to Hewn City, the city in the Court of Nightmares, and Feyre is not ready for that. I don't think anyone's ready to go to the Hewn City. Not at all, but they gotta go. Later on, so same day but later on, Feyre is boarding the bed as Rizan comes back home. Feyre brings him food, and the two talk about Feyre's cycle, which is different than when you're a human. So this is too much TMI, I'll say it very quickly. So, like, you know, if you're a female, human, you get it every month for like 30-40 years, depending on how much you got and stuff, biology. But with the Fae, with the world building here, you get it twice a year, which doesn't sound as bad, right? But apparently it's double the amount of pain and blood and all that. And that sounds miserable, in my opinion. So, like, do I want to be a Fae? Yes. Do I want to have magical powers? Yes. Do I want that? I got enough going on with my own. It's like, no. And they also talk about how conceiving is hard among the Fae, and how she had told Elaine and Nesta about it. See, Feyre's a nice younger sister. She went and told her sisters. I would have been like, nah, y'all can deal with it by yourself. So she was like, no, do it. Feyre brings up Elaine and Lucien about their relationship, and Rizan says that he could forgive Elaine for how she treated Feyre, but that he would never forgive Nesta for letting Feyre out in the woods to hunt solo. That was back when they were humans living in the cabin. The two get cozy in bed as Feyre shares a thought about going to the rainbow and possibly painting with the others. Rizan shares his thoughts about the day she first winnowed in the snow and tackled him, and how he wanted her to do that again, but with the no clothing on. The two talk about their love for one another and to have each other for solstice when Mora comes knocking on the door. The two have to pause their connection for the moment to get ready to go to Human City. So now we go to Mora's point of view, which I believe this is the first time ever we've ever heard her thoughts and how she experiences things around her. So just kind of excited about that. Alright, so Mor, Muzan, Feyre, Kier, that's Mor's father, and Eris, who's part of the Autumn Court, are talking about wanting to take control of the Autumn Court, but that conversation is off the table as peace was trying to be rebuilt. Then there is talk about the Spring Court borders not being protected, that Tamlin was not doing a very good job at that. Mor has a flashback to the day she was tortured and left for dead, and how Azriel came to save her. She was then upset with herself that she could not think of something to say to Kier, that truth was her gift and her curse. To Rhysand's point of view, he and Azriel were looking over maps in the Illyrian clans. The human queens are still in the lands and have not returned to their territories. For now, it was just watching everyone as peace was slowly being built back up. Azriel asks if they have to get the sisters' presents, and Rhysand says no and means it. Rhysand decides to go to the Spring Court to visit Tamlin, and there's still no word on our cute boy Braxis. He's still out there. I'm just waiting for him to one day stumble upon Cassie and be like, hello there. Hello there. And then Cassian's like, oh no, oh heck no, I'm out of here. Oh no. I'm waiting. I love Braxis so much. Azriel will visit Rose Hall, which I had to look this up because I was like, where's Rose Hall again? Rose Hall is hinted to where his mother lives, and he's going to visit her after the winter solstice. Didn't know that. Now we do, so I share that information with you. Cassian's point of view, he feels a storm is coming. Same, I can do the same thing. He ordered the girls a day off, so because there's a storm coming, he's like, alright, y'all can have the day off, like no training in the rain and storming and all that stuff, so good job, taking care of those girlies. Just to be safe in case enemies strike, he goes to a shop and meets, I'm gonna say this name wrong, I promise to look it up before I believe the next book, but I believe it's Emie? E-M-E-R-I-E, I hope I spelled right too. He buys a bunch of gear and weapons, and they exchange a few words about Solstice and the materials that he's buying. Feyre's point of view, she is going to the studio and starting to have second thoughts about it, and Rhysand talks through the bond to help settle her fears. She decides not to go into the glowing studio with people inside, but rather the rundown one she had seen before. She manages to winnow inside, and after exploring the place, she then started to paint. Mostly because she did not want others to see her first painting. I believe it's been quite some time since she's painted. She painted what she saw in the Ouroboros. Go read the book. You want to know what that is? Go watch the video after this one. Rhysand goes to the Spring Court. Oh, Rhysand's point of view. So Rhysand goes to the Spring Court, and it's dirty, unkempt, it's not very pretty, and Tamlin is depressed, and they both talk about the borders. That's why Rhysand's going. He's like, hey, your borders aren't being secure, like, I know there's no more wall. The wall came down after the cauldron did. I guess the previous cauldron did, because Rhysand and Feyre made up the new cauldron, which, by the way, where's that at? Maybe it'll be explained in this book, but where's the cauldron now? I don't know. But yeah, there's no more wall, and he's like, hey, at least, like, you know, have a couple sentries out there, just make sure everything's safe. And Tamlin, and Rhysand wanted his warriors on his lands, and which Tamlin refused. Rhysand gives him a piece of his mind, but instead of a fight, Tamlin tells Rhysand winnows away from the Spring Court and joins Feyre and Velaris, who is doing some shopping. The two talk for a moment, and then Rhysand goes to the jewelry store to get Amryn jewels for the solstice. Feyre's point of view, she helps Cassian decorate, and mostly drinks. The inner circle arrive, and when Amryn makes a comment about Nesta being at solstice, especially arriving sober, Feyre goes to where Elaine is helping to cook a meal. The two talk about Nesta, who had said Nesta once told her that they had their lives and she had hers, selfish much. The inner circle all gather around to eat dinner and talk. After dinner, Feyre and Rhysand go across the city to where Nesta was, and Feyre tries to convince her to come to the solstice. But after the family talk attempt of "you being my sister," nearly saying that their father would have wanted them all together for the winter solstice, Nesta demands Feyre to leave. Feyre tells Nesta to come to the solstice if she wanted to pay for the rent. Ooh, ouch, but noted. Come to solstice, I'll give you your check for the rent. Don't come to solstice, you don't get the monies. Real quick, so Roseanne's point of view, looking over the repairs and talking more about here and the plans that were upcoming, Roseanne says he needs more for what is to come. So him and more talking about this and that and all, about here and everything, and Roseanne's like, I'm gonna need you for what's about to come. I don't think she like confirms or denies it. I think she's just like, eh. Feyre's point of view, Feyre and Elaine go out shopping, and Feyre finds a tapestry of a black void in rendered silver thread called the Void, and the silver threads were called Hope. Feyre buys the tapestry for herself. Feyre later goes to the abandoned studio and paints. Then Roseanne comes into the house. No, not Roseanne. Roseanne was a little mop and everything. Nope, wrong one. Ressian comes into the house to help clean it, mostly in case the building sells, it won't be a mess. Ressian said the past owner who died, Paulina, I think that's how you say it, I'm so sorry. Paulina would have liked Feyre to have the old studio house. But Feyre turns the offer down again, and the two leave, and Feyre runs into Roseanne. She shows him the building she was painting in her hope to possibly one day teach others to paint. Feyre goes and visits Amren, who was obsessed with puzzles. There's talk about Nesta once again coming, and if Amren could convince her, but Amren says no, she won't make any promises. Roseanne's point of view sees Cassian bring in the weapons that he brought, so they're all like at the townhouse and everything. And Cassian brings in all these weapons. They're like, oh, is this solstice games? He's like, no, this is for the girls to use for training. Then they talk about sleeping arrangements. Later on, Solstice Eve, they all gather around to talk and drink, and the solstice festivities begin. So now, we're in solstice. Not only that, Feyre wakes up the next morning, and Roseanne gives her 3 presents for her birthday. This winter solstice is also Feyre's birthday. We learned that in a court of Mist and Fury during the Starfall, which Feyre tells Roseanne when her birthday was. So for her birthday, she gets 3 presents: a travel bag for her art supplies, a journal to sketch in, and a scarf. Very thoughtful gifts. Feyre draws Roseanne, yes, like one of the French girl poses, as a birthday gift for herself. Later on in the morning, the boys leave for a tradition. Moore sleeps in, and Elaine is in the kitchen. Feyre does some paperwork on solstice and her birthday. Boo! Don't do that. And contemplates buying the studio. She then goes to the kitchen to see Elaine baking and talks with her. They hear a knock and hope it was Nesta. Well, it's actually Lucien, who showed up for winter solstice. Lucien says he is staying in an old manor house with Vassa and Julian, and not at the Spring Court. I believe they're in the human lands. Elaine gets refreshments, and Feyre and Lucien talk about Elaine, still hurt over what happened with her engagement, and Lucien takes offense, not accepting Feyre's generosity or help. Rather, he stays with the 2 friends he made, which they call themselves the Band of Exiles. Really want to guess. Lucien leaves, saying he left 2 gifts for Elaine and Feyre. Feyre goes and tells Elaine that Lucien was not staying, and that she could have at least greeted Lucien. Oh yeah, Elaine didn't say a word to Lucien, she just kind of like sat there and didn't say a word. That's kind of awkward. The reason why Feyre steps in often is because she does not want to see either of them unhappy. Like, she's been with Lucien through thick and thin. Elaine is her sister, she wants to protect her and all that, so saw what happened with the cauldron, bring up the engagement, so she just wants everybody to be happy. Don't we all? More then arrives, and she winnows a curious Feyre up to the mountains to the cabin to see the 3 Illyrian warriors having a snowball fight as tradition for them, which by the way, Azriel won. Yeah, that's sweet. Moore and Feyre go inside the cabin, where it is warm, and the three males go to the sauna. But Rhysand gets kicked out because Feyre was sending naughty images his way. So, that's fun. Back at the townhouse, the solstice festivities started with a toast from Rhysand. Feyre is there wearing her starfall gown once again. Elaine brings in a birthday cake for Feyre, where each layer, so it's a 3-layer cake, where each layer was decorated as the dresser. One of the famous dresser. I have like a little mini dresser somewhere. I'll get it later. Flowers, the fire, and the night sky. They all ate cake, and then they had presents. So many presents. And apparently Rhysand is the best at keeping secrets and not saying who got what or who didn't get who what and all this stuff. I was surprised it wasn't Asriel, but he's like, I'm a spy master, and I'm like, you know what, that kind of makes sense. So Rhysand's the one that keeps charge of all of that. Feyre did get some nice gifts. It was very thoughtful gifts. Also, Nesta did arrive. She showed up. It was that rent check. I'm telling you, it was the rent. Rent's due. I gotta show up. And only got one gift from Elaine, a nice set of books that Nesta wanted. Or, I don't know if Nesta wanted it. I'm trying to remember if Elaine just, like, was asking, like, what's the best books to buy. But they were apparently very nice books. I like nice books. I was just at the bookstore yesterday. I'm like, I want books. Like, you just bought books. Let's see. At least I can agree with Nesta on that. Books are amazing. Books are good. Feyre made each person of the inner court a painting, with her for Rhysand showing her true self. So the first painting she did, her reflection in the Ouroboros, that's what she gave to Rhysand. And that was so sweet. And he didn't critique her or anything. He was just like, I accept who you are and I accept your painting. And I'm just like, what a good man. What a good man. Anyway, and of course, Elaine, this was a funny gift. I really like this. Elaine gave Asriel the powder to help him with his headaches since he was always rubbing his temples. They all left with Feyre giving Nesta the check for the rent. Nesta left and Cassian follows Nesta. So, yeah. Right before dinner, Nesta's just like, I'm gonna dip and leave, but I'll tell you why here in a second. Cassian's point of view, he sees Nesta and tries to walk with her. He got her a solstice gift and she doesn't want it. The two argue over Nesta's behavior towards the others and not trying to be better, but she tells him to stop following her and talking to her. But instead of fighting him about it, she turns away to walk home. It's funny now that I think about it. Like, Tamlin didn't want to fight Rhysand, even though he could have, like, right then and there, but he just didn't, and now Nesta's like, I'm not even going to try and fight you, Cassian. Cassian throws the gift into the Sidral River, so for my Ruby fans, we'll never know what was inside the bag that Ruby had got in Volume 6, and now I will never know what Cassian got Nesta for Solstice, because he threw it in the river. And then within that chapter, it switches over a little bit to Nesta's point of view, just very briefly. So she knew Cassian followed her home back to the apartment, and she said she didn't like the sound of fire because the crackles and snaps within the fire reminded her of her father's head being snapped off. That's why she couldn't really stay at Feyre's place. There was a fire going, and she was like, this sounds too traumatizing for her. So I'm like, okay. I didn't even think of that, but then when I watched like a video of like a fire and was like kind of imagining it, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it makes sense. She had to be cold about it. She didn't have to be cold about it, but she could have just been like, you know, oh, let's move somewhere where there's not a fireplace, like around the dining room or something. I was gonna say study, but I feel like studies always have a fireplace, so they're much smaller and there's a lot of people there. Anyway, so Nesta is cold, alone, and just silent. And then she feels like this like sense of like silent rage, and then she feels like absolutely nothing. She's going through it. Feyre's point of view, they go back to the cabin for some quiet time. Her and Rhysand go for a little bit of quiet time, back to the mountains in the cabin. Feyre shows Rhysand what she truly wants, a child with him. During their fun time, they knock down an expensive vase during their activities, and Rhysand says to Feyre that that is coming out of her paycheck in a teasing way. On the way home, Rhysand shows Feyre an estate and says that it was Feyre's true birthday present, and says to fill it with whatever she wanted, to paint it, to do what she wanted with it, that it was now hers. And then Razan's point of view, reflecting on night activities. Then he was back at the Spring Courts and makes another attempt back at the Spring Court, which Tamlin had a kill on the table of an elk. They again talk about the borders now being patrolled by Summer Court forces, which they had agreed to. Glad to see they're branching. It's good to see that too, that it's kind of like, okay, well, if we can get the Summer Court into the Spring Court, kind of watch, maybe one day we'll have like the Winter Court on our side too, because the Winter Court is still like very closed off, can't really get in there as much, so yeah. Thinks of Feyre and her forgiveness. In response, Razan heats up some food and tells Tamlin to eat. Feyre's point of view, standing in front of the gallery she was given, and now her and Razan are starting to clean up the place to make it into a studio people could come and do art. Feyre remembers the serial's words of leave the world a better place than she found it. Razan, there's a quick point of view of him watching the Illyrian females in the ring. I feel like that's going to be more important in the next book, but it's like a very quick of him just like watching them train and all of that. And then again, lastly, Feyre again, actually 1 month later, I'm going to get into timelines here in a second, but 1 month after the solstice, when she was given the studio, like she went to the family of Paulina and said, here's a check, I'd like to buy the building for an art gallery, and they were just like, nope, it's yours, here's the deed, here's the title, sign away, it's yours. So, yeah. So Feyre and Razan, they clean it all up, they get supplies, they get everything they need, make it warm, welcoming, colors, all this type of stuff. They do like a very small, intimate advertising of like just a couple folks. And when they're like, when is it? Is it free? They're like, yes, it's free. They'll supply everything, so yeah. So now it's a month later. They spend a month cleaning, prepping, advertising, spawning, all that good stuff. The two of them are standing in front of the finished building, and they welcome their first set of artists, which are just some small little children. And Razan greets her afterwards, and they talk about the first lesson and how it went. Feyre reflects on how happy she feels, and Feyre and Razan say I love you to one another, and then they also say the quote, to the stars who listen, and the dreams that are considered. That was a court of Frost and Starlight. Yay! So, I want to say too. I also got my solstice gift from a friend at work. Little tumblr. So everything that I wanted to say commentary on, I will now say commentary on. So reflections! Yay! Overall, with this story and the book and everything, the writing was nice. It was whimsical. There was nice dialogue between them all. It feels like, in a way, it's keeping Nesta quiet for now. Like, literally, she didn't really say a word at the party. I think it's towards Solane about the books and stuff. She has to say thank you. That's the polite thing to do. Anyway. But yeah, I feel like it's keeping Nesta quiet for now because in the next book, that's going to be more Nesta's point of view, so. But I'm sure there's a lot of, like, internal dialogues with Nesta. So again, short and a bit lighthearted. It's, compared to the first 3 books, a lot of times you see, like, oh, it's like, the slice of life, and then, like, it's very lighthearted, very whimsical and stuff. It's like, we kind of need this as, like, a palate cleanser after everything that just happened, so, yeah, I don't mind it. But during the second reread, because I had listened to the book before, and this is my second time, like, really getting the material, my first time reading it, but yeah, that's probably confusing. Anyway, second time hearing this story, there are darker moments with Keir, and even Tamlin, and, trying to keep the fragile peace, but need this after the last couple books. I believe, in my personal opinion, this would be better as a movie compared to a series. Like, the first 3 books, yeah, you can break it down to a series, 12, 20 episodes, whatever. This would be cute as an hour-and-a-half movie. No more, no less. Do not add stuff. It's perfect the way it is. I love it, I love it, I love it. So this would be so cute, and I would watch it every single Christmas, let me tell you. Like, Christmas? Every single week I'd be watching this. So, yeah, this would be much better, in my opinion, as a holiday season movie. So, yes. I will say, the point of views do start to get annoying after a while. It's like, especially towards the middle of the book, it's like, at this point, we're used to Feyre's point of view, just her. I think, the second book, towards the end, it switches over to Rizan's point of view, but that makes sense because, you know, by then, Feyre's like, she's like, oh, I'll go back with you, Tamlin, like, I'll go back to the Spring Court, even though it's like, Seriously, she's, you know, High Lady of the Night Court and all this stuff. But when it switches over to Rizan's point of view and everybody's like, we need to go back, we need to go get them, what just happened and stuff, that made sense. Because I think then it switched back to Feyre and all that. In the third book, I don't think there's much point of view switching. No. This one, yes. This one had a lot, so I was like, time, power through. So, we're used to Feyre's point of view and to see other characters' experiences and what they're thinking, rather than during or after an event takes place, they go and talk to Feyre. Be better if all... It would be better if it was all one point of view than maybe at the end, Cassian and Nesta, but as they try to talk things out, like, yeah, it'd be better if it was just all Feyre, maybe some Rhysand here and there, because you have to go to the Illyrian camps and all that. It was like Moor and Cassian and Nesta and all this stuff. It's like, where are we gonna get Elaine's point of view? How about the twins? I don't know. It was a bit annoying, but yeah. Okay, so here's something for the ACOTAR fandom. So, do the characters have last names? I know the sisters do, but I noticed when Moore gave Azriel his gift that it had his initials on it. And I was like, is that just Az? Is it something like more like a nickname type of thing? I don't know. Because when you think initials, you think like first name, last name initials. Maybe a middle initial they have them and stuff, but I don't know. And also too, they don't say man or woman, they say male or female. Because I noticed like Elaine was having trouble with that. So I think I did it earlier too, but yeah, it's just some like little things here and there, like trying to adjust to and all that, and it's like, it's interesting, so interesting. Alright, here we go. The timeline. This is very, very interesting. So the timeline, I had to research online and discovered that all the events of book 2 and 3 and 2 and 3 all take place within a year. Okay. So it felt longer than that in the story. I mean, I know it's separate books and all that, but it feels longer than that. So according to this timeline, I'll put a link down below, but in January, Rhysand crashes the wedding. That's when they had the wedding, where they wore that hideous dress. And then, you know, back and forth between the Spring Court and the Night Court, you know, they have Starfall. And then, you know, they go to the visit the Queens. There's the attack on Velaris. That all takes place by the end of May. So that's whenever Recorded Mist of Fury ends. So yeah, that's book 2. Book 3 starts during the summer. Yeah, and during the summertime, that's when the battle happens. So during like early winter, spring is like book 2. Book 3 is like all during like the summer, like that short amount of time. And then this book takes place like same year, but like towards the end of the year in December. And then it wraps up in the following year in January. Because I've been seeing timelines too of like, oh, it's like a week later. It's like, no, they say it's a month later. It's not gonna take a week to clean. If so, come clean my house, please. Whatever fan magic you have, I'll bargain. I'll make a bargain. Do whatever. So yeah, so then it was funny because then when she's like, wow, it was a year ago. I was like, a year ago? That can't be right. And then looking back at the story and then these timelines and stuff, I'm like, all of this took place within a year? That's crazy. So crazy. It feels like so much longer. Anyway, I thought I'd share that because my brain was trying to wrap around it for like an hour and I was like, oh my gosh, but it's amazing. It's just funny how a year ago she was like, I don't want to be in the Night Court, I don't want to wear these clothes, I don't want to do anything with you, get this thing off of me. I will fix this one day, I promise. And I'll do the other hand as well. But yeah, like, you know, all this stuff, and then a year later she's like Lady of the Night Court, High Lady of the Night Court, and you know, she's fought for the people and all this stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know. Give Good for Feyre. Let's see. Tamlin being depressed. Rhysand kept saying he appeared broken. At first, no Lyran warriors being in the Spring Court makes sense given their past histories. I was kind of like Rhysand, like, it's not a good idea to put the Lyran warriors there. Like, you need soldiers or warriors from, like, a more, allied court, I guess you could say. And then when it mentioned the Summer Court, I was like, okay, because I think, like, Summer Court and Spring Court in the second book, the third book, one of those books, they were, like, closely connected or something. I know they were, like, pretty close. Like, if you look at the map, they're not too terribly far from one another. It's hard to turn pages with this book, but you know what I mean, right? So that made much more sense. And they're both seasonal courts too, so that would make much more sense than Night Court warriors going to Spring. That makes sense. There was a chapter again with Mor's point of view. We learned she can ride horses. I guess there was a horse in the beginning of book 1. Then there's not really mention with the winnowing and flying and all this stuff. Mor has a horse named, I'm going to say Ilya, in an estate called Ethelwood. Not mentioned before, but now her and Feyre are now estate guardians. Mor goes riding to feel a sense of freedom, but is often stopped by the thoughts of what she might see in... Was it the Night Court or was it Hume City? One of those two. But it's not like a whole lot of info. To me, the chapter seemed a bit confusing. That's why I didn't really mention it in the whole summary thing, and I saved it for now, because I was just like, do we need this? Like, what does this mean? Is this just Mor's internal dialogue? Like, is this going to reflect something later on? That was my other thought too. I'm like, well, maybe something in book 5 will happen. This is just the build-up for it. He's like, oh, a nice little whimsical book. And then, you know, in the dark parts of the book, there's like all the self-doubt and internal dialoguing and all that stuff, which I appreciate. I like shows and books like that, so we'll see. We'll see how this ties together. So now, we're not just keeping track of characters. No longer are we doing like point of views, because I think after this, again, it's going to go back to Nesta. We're not really going to have Feyre as much anymore. I love her so much. But, yeah, no longer are we keeping track of all of these different characters. We now have places in Velaris we gotta keep track of too. We have the townhouse. We have the House of Wind, the big house mansion thing that's on top of the mountain. Townhouse is in Velaris. The estate, that's now Feyre's. And the painting studio. I was like, oh boy. Here we go. So, that's okay. That's okay. They're all living their best lives, at least for the moment. They're trying to hold the piece together. They're trying to figure out this whole family situation and all that. So, but still, it was a good book. I enjoyed reading it. It's again Christmas Day, all nice and cozied up and finished. Different things like that. So, yes, that was A Court of Frost and Starlight. So up next is the 5th book, which I have never read before. I have heard things. I have seen spoilers. I've already been spoiled. It's fine. I know it's coming. I don't want to read it though. But yeah, you know. So it's fine. I'm just gonna sit in the water and breathe. But yes, so not really looking forward to it, but once I get through it, I can go on to the next series. So that's what I'm trying to encourage myself right now. Like, get through this book. Do your video review. I do have a Nesta cosplay, which you can see. Cosplay Tea Time. I believe the Cosplay Start Stories is where I dress up as Nesta, because everybody else is dressed all bright and beautiful, and I'm like this dark little person, and I'm like, this tracks. This makes sense. Yeah. And then, yeah, I have some videos and photos out there of Nesta as well. I will do a lane one day. I keep making that promise. I just have to find the right color dress. I know it's out there somewhere. It's beckoning. I just need a thrift store day. I need a thrifting day. Need a thrift day. Anyway. But all that to say that was A Court of Frost and Starlight, so do let me know in the comments, what did you think about the story? What were some of your favorite moments of the story? So, I like when the inner court is all together and they're just, you know, they're picking on one another, they're sharing laughs and stories and all that, making new memories and everything. It's like, I love that. I didn't like during the 3rd book when they were all fighting amongst one another. I was like, stop it! No! Don't do it! So, yeah, I was happy to see them all come together and just be a big happy family. And I think that's what they were reflected on was, you know, Solstice is a time for family. Now she has her found family. Or a year ago, she was with Tamlin. But Everyone's depressed in the spring court, so. I have often wondered if that Tamlin and Nesta bonded thing is a thing. But I don't know. Again, I'll figure that out after I beat book 5, so that's what I will go do once I am done meal prepping for the day, for the week. Ooh. So, yes, do let me know your thoughts down below. Just want to say thank you all so much for watching. First video of 2026 in the works, so appreciate you all sticking with me. Many more videos to come. Got some exciting plans ahead, so just want to say thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you're taking care, staying safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone! Oh wait, peace, love, and kindness. Bye everyone!